Chapter 13. Behind Enemy Lines. Iron smashed into my head. I was lying on my back when I came to. I had no idea as to how much time had passed. My entire skull pulsed with pain, and I was nauseous and dizzy. My right knee throbbed. It was dark, and for a moment I thought it was night. I turned my head and saw daylight, and from somewhere heard Russian being yelled. I looked up and again saw the underbelly of a tank, about 2 meters above me. One tread was broken, putting it out of action. It had come to a stop above me, straddling the trench. I ran a hand through my hair. It was wet with blood, and there was a large lump just above the hairline. I reached down and felt my pounding right knee. It was bloody, and my fingers came upon a jagged piece of shrapnel that felt embedded in the joint. I rolled sideways. All around me were the ugly leftovers of the battle: shell casings, wooden boxes, helmets, weapons, empty canisters, and dead bodies, both Russian and German. More of the same filled the trench to either side of the tank. When I turned to look, a dead arm flopped down on the back of my neck, knocking my head downward. My chin came to rest on the gray-green of a dead German's chest. And looking right into my face, was another face, that of a blond Russian boy. His lifeless eyes locked open in disbelief. I looked away as I suddenly became aware of the sound of a distant battle, then almost jumped at the sound of a nearby gunshot. I heard someone pleading in German, then another shot. I belly-crawled a half-meter and peered out. What I saw sickened and terrified me. A Russian officer was methodically seeking out the German wounded and shooting them. A lumbering oaf of a foot soldier using a bayonet was dispatching other Germans. He seemed to be enjoying what he was doing, and many of those he was bayoneting looked already dead. He was just making sure. I froze at the sound of nearby voices. "I want this tank operational immediately," someone was demanding in Russian. "I will do my best, Master Sergeant," came the response. "Parts are in short supply. Just get it done." The voices were close, but I could not tell from where they were coming exactly. 2 booted legs jumped into the trench, followed by another pair. My heart pounded so hard and loud, I was sure it would be heard. 2 Russians knelt down in the trench beside the tank and examined the dangling, shattered tread. Remembering Doberman's words, I played dead among the dead. "And how does the idiot think we're supposed to repair it?" groused one of the men. "We'll need another T-34 tank to pull it free," came the reply. "Prenitsche mnie palhuska один T-34. Both laughed. One had joked that their superior officer acted as though they could repair the tank by magic. The 2 figures rose, and out of a slitted eye, I saw 2 pairs of legs headed away down the trench. They paused for a moment and huddled with a man who had a white cross of a medic on his helmet, and helped him tend to a badly wounded Russian soldier. Between the 3 of them, using a blanket as a makeshift stretcher, they trundled the wounded man out of the trench. Entangled in carnage and debris, boxed in by the walls of the trench and the bottom of the tank, I lay there wondering what to do, frightened, too frightened to do anything. I wanted someone to help me, to talk to me as my mother would, and tell me what to do. I looked for help and saw only the dead. From somewhere down the trench came another bang. Perhaps another wounded German had been executed. My gut knotted with fear. Over and over I kept hearing what Doberman had said to us just one day before. I tried to think. We had been overrun. In the distance, in the direction of the bunker hill, fierce fighting continued. Battles that I could not see were being fought. More Russians were passing by every minute. I heard them. I saw them scramble through the trench. I was trapped behind enemy lines. If discovered, I would be killed. Even playing dead would not save me. Even dead, once found, I would be skewered on the end of a bayonet. I had only one chance, I knew, to save myself. The eyes, the dead eyes of the blond Russian boy, seemed to be watching me. With my fingers, I closed the lids. Strange though it may seem, I didn't want him looking at me and what I was about to do. In that cramped and bloody charnel house beneath the tank, I removed my clothes, even my socks and underwear, then exchanged my clothes for his. The task was very difficult. I was in considerable pain, especially from my right knee, from which the ragged bit of metal was protruding, and it was extremely awkward undressing, then trying to redress the inert body, the limbs of which were already turning stiff. During this last part of the gruesome process, I had to stop. The two Russians I had heard before returned. They crawled in amidst the bodies and examined the tank's underside, then commenced cutting and pulling out long strands of barbed wire that had become entangled in its drive wheels. At this juncture, I was no more than half done redressing the corpse in my own uniform. Sick with fear, only a few centimeters from the two men, I lay frozen in place, certain that I would be found out. But the minds of the two, both seemingly mechanics, were on other things. They paid not the slightest bit of attention to me, to the half-dressed corpse, or to any of the bodies. Finally they left, and I finished my ugly chore as fast as I could. In the pocket of the brown jacket I felt a bulge and removed a wallet. In it there were a few rubles and a military identification card. In the dim light I tried to make out the name. I was unable to, and returned the wallet to my pocket. I pulled myself from under the tank and along the trench, over more bodies and more trash. From somewhere came the sound of approaching vehicles and far-off voices, Russian voices. Amidst more dead and more trash, I leaned back against the wall of the trench, thinking back. Hals had been killed, and before that Willie had lost an arm and Fasnacht a foot. Oscar had been shot in the back, running away. But Jacob was still alive, as far as I knew, and so was Doberman. I looked at the faces of the dead in the trench, wondering if I would see Doberman or Jacob, and hoping I wouldn't, hoping that somehow they were still alive.